The Eurovision Song Contest. Okay, where do I begin? So, at any rate, for most of you who live outside of Europe, you might not know this, although it has surely expanded over the last few years and is now being broadcast in quite a few other continents. But early after World War II, the European countries came together, and I think that's about the time they founded the European Broadcaster Union, EU. I think it's slash U something. The whole umbrella thing that holds this contest together, this whole scope, if you will. But yeah, so to the best of my knowledge, the initial idea was to just get these European countries together that had been feuding and fighting each other and so forth and so on for this whole time, and just try and do something cultural, sing a few songs, have a good party, celebrate ourselves and each other a little bit, rather than just feuding and fighting, which is all well and good. But it doesn't seem to have lasted for all that long. Now, we've seen throughout the decades. It's now been, I think, 63 years running. We've seen throughout the decades that some countries tend to hold close to ancient ties with each other. The Grecosphere, so Greece and Cyprus, they have a tendency to always give the 12 points to each other, and we always kind of just overlook that. And then there's a Turcosphere, so Turkey and Azerbaijan, also very, very friendly and very likely to give those points to each other. And yeah, oddly enough, Yugoslavia, this country collapsed and broke into several nations because they couldn't get along. And yet, once they were all broken up, it was as if they had nothing but loyalty and brotherhood towards each other. Maybe they're just friends when they face off as outsiders, and then when there are no outside threats, then they can't help but rip each other's heads off. Kind of like um, interesting sibling dynamics often at times. It's just like nobody beats my brother but me. So yeah, it's all just a bit crazy. It came to a point in time where Eurovision was relabeled Yugovision, which is why they then split up the semifinals that they had brought about because there were just too many countries participating at that point into two, and then those countries into various buckets. So you can't have all the Balkan countries in one contest, and you can't have all the Nordic slash Baltic countries and all in the same contest. So it does mix things up a little bit. But at any rate, so yeah, it was all well and good while countries would just show up and sing and present their language and their culture and some of their heritage, and everybody just this big variety pool celebrating itself. It was all about well and good. But I've seen, especially, um, I feel like it's intensified over the past decade that politics are creeping back in and creeping back in big time. Now, there was sort of a sense of this starting back in the 90s, now obviously with the breakup of Yugoslavia, and then going into the tech and digital age. It was sort of that's when the gay politics and the LGBT politics started creeping in there, and again, all well and good if it's in the spirit of celebration. But it really, in my view, really hit the big note like 2 or 3 years ago. I think just after the whole Russia Ukraine thing started to unfold, and these two young sisters from Russia walked onto stage, perfectly innocent young sisters just walking onto a stage to sing their damn song. And the minute they walk on, it's as if the entire EU bloc in the audience just starts booing them down. And it's just, yeah, EU leaders have done a really great job at training their citizens to hate Russia. Because evil Putin, and yeah, all well and good. Criticize politics all over the place, and we all have our opinions and views and stances and whatnot. But can we have at least some refuge where we can just go and escape, please? And can we not make some performers guilty of whatever we think their countries are doing wrong politically. I mean, and then to top it all off, there was, I think, a year or two later, the two countries on top of the countries fighting for the first place were Russia and the Ukraine, and that looked like it might be a crazy headache as well. But yeah, at any rate, this tends to happen so much, you guys, and here's my theory as to why. So once you have something that is an escape valve, sort of, where we can get away from all of this stuff that we have in our everyday lives, and we have politics being shoved down our throats like everything else 24/7 out there in real life. Sometimes we just want to sit down in front of a TV screen and have a break. And this is where we all come together, which is why it does get a lot of attention, a lot of viewership, a lot of eyeballs on it. And that's, of course, when you get a lot of eyeballs in the same place, then, of course, advertisers go, ooh, eyeballs, I need me some of that. But then again, also, political messaging comes, ooh, eyeballs, I need me some of that. Which, having a background from inside of Hollywood, we've seen this quite a bit as well, and Hollywood is definitely taking a hit for catering to political pandering and political messaging, because quite frankly, just a lot of people just want to be told a story, or they want to be entertained, and as I try and say to my fellow creative individuals and my fellow artists is, there's no crime in simply entertaining people. There's no crime in that, and there's no crime in making someone laugh. There's no crime in simply telling a story. Sometimes, these are the most important things that you can do. To do good in the world is to just quite simply do these things. Simple, keep it simple, keep it clean, authentic from the heart, and just serve that need for escape. When artists start to think that they have to be constantly, all the time, the voice of politics or progress or whatever, and try and move society into certain ways, it kind of loses the other role, the other important role that the arts do play, which is just quite frankly to be there to serve the human soul when it needs to get a break from reality. And there's, in my view, a noble virtue to that as well. But at any rate, so yeah, the Tomashevy sisters. That was when I felt like politics were really, really just becoming overwhelming in the contest. And much like being too political has thrown Hollywood out of grace among even people who agree with the politics they're mostly pushing, then the same thing I definitely anticipate will happen to the Eurovision Song Contest if it doesn't change its ways. Now, it's interesting to note, and they've brought in a lot of artists with either disabilities or from minority groups. This whole intersectionalism and political correctness, if you will. They've had people with disabilities singing, and then like I said, the gay community is coming strong, the LGBT community and everything. Yeah, very beautiful. But if that is solely to pander for sympathy votes, then of course that becomes a little bit of a question as well. I mean, yeah, if you like the fact that someone is out in a wheelchair and is doing everything they want in life, which actually I find very inspiring. I love it when I see people just not let anything stop them and just go out and do what they do. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm still gonna say, do I find this song better than all the other songs? And vote my conscience if I'm gonna vote. But yeah, it's it was a little different though this year. There was one artist with massive disabilities, the vocalist from Russia, and she didn't make it up through the semifinals. Now the question is that because she was representing Russia and it's a fashionable trend to just hate Russia and everything it does, Or was it because, quite frankly, we've had so much of PC politics in there that people are less responsive towards that, and just like, yeah, okay, she's disabled. We've had a lot of disabled vocalists, but I don't like the song. I don't know. So, and that's probably the justifications are probably as diverse as the whole crowd voting. But oddly enough, the act that managed to win, the Israeli act, that sparked quite a bit of a shitstorm all across the continent. Because, yeah, of course, the minute that happens, you get the whole Israel Palestine politics in there, and a whole bunch of people now want to boycott next year's contest. And, they're even many of them going as far as saying it's racist to vote for Israel. Even the fact that they won, that's something, somehow says something about the European continent, that we are enabling them and just keep doing what they're doing to Palestinians, etc., etc. I mean, there was a time when somebody would ask, wait, Europeans voted for the Jews? Oh, it's a step in the right direction from World War II. But I guess those days are over now. So yeah, there was that whole ordeal. And of course, she stepped out in the end. The vocalist herself made it very political. I mean, she came out with this song having been sparked out of the Me Too movement, etc., etc., and which, yeah, it's very much a woman declaring her own independence, if you will, type of song. Um, but at the same time, she also, in her acceptance speech, said, "See you next year in Jerusalem." And yeah, that sparked yet another one of these outcries. Now, I had jokingly said already back when the semifinals were, I tweeted out about her cultural appropriation as a joke, because, quite frankly, I was like, hey, you know, since we're already getting so political in this contest, why don't we get political about her cultural appropriation? Thinking I was just joking around, but I don't know. I wasn't the only one who noticed it, and a lot of the other people who noticed it, they weren't taking that very lightly. So the fact that she had waving, lucky cats in the background, and this whole Asian hairstyle and outfit and everything, yeah, that was she was bashed big time, and has been bashed big time for appropriating Asian culture into her acts, and which is very unapologetic about, because she's come out and said, yeah, I'm a fan of all of these things, and to her it's appreciation, not appropriation. But you can't please them all, can you? I don't know. From my standpoint, if anyone wants to wear something like this and whatnot, even if you don't have any idea what it means, it's that's advertisement right there. anyone anyone who takes anything out of my culture, and even when they grossly misrepresent it, even when you have uh, things like Marvel coming out with a what's a good word for that? A complete disruption of the Norse gods and pantheon and everything. Yeah, even that. You know what? I should sit here and be super insulted that they're making it into something that it isn't. But you know what? I'm not. Not. It couldn't bother me less, actually, and that's what a lot of people in other countries say as well. Like going back to that whole prom dress thing. You know, a lot of people of Chinese heritage or from China even went just like, so that's not racist. She can totally wear that dress to her prom. It looks good on her. And yeah, the dress did look good on her. So yeah, kudos to that little prom girl, teen, whatever. Good for her. And it's, we take ourselves way too seriously at times, and that is one of our flaws as people, taking ourselves too seriously. And I've said this before. I say it a lot. There's no greater thing that you can do for yourself as an individual than to just get over yourself. And we need to do that repeatedly, oftentimes. I need to get the heck over myself on things almost every day. So it's a constant work in progress, but it does take the pressure off, absolutely, and enables me to focus on things that matter more. At any rate, yeah, I just figured I'd throw out some of this stuff, and especially if you haven't heard about the Eurovision Song Contest. I know Sargon of Akkad spoke on this a little bit the other day, and said, "Well, if you haven't heard of it, you're not missing anything," and, which at this point, sadly, is probably kind of true. I miss it back when everybody would just sing in their language. I didn't think that was pitfall at all. Yeah, maybe it's easier to get people along and get them to remember your song if you have languages that are more accessible to more people who will be voting. But yeah, that's at the end of the day, it's also taste in music is also so subjective. Even from an artistic standpoint, and from a point of view of well, if there's anything that can be called expertise in the arts, it's really interesting. Old Skipper wasn't much of an artist, but he had a very good take on this. He said, "How can you be an expert on my intellectual output, my intellectual property?" And it was a really good question to pose. And as I say, when I give my take on anything, I try and separate my professional argumentation for what I think is good craftsmanship or execution, and then my personal take. I can be talking about a movie or a stage act or something, and I can list a whole bunch of reasons for why it's good art and good craftsmanship and nicely executed, but it just doesn't speak to me. Then I can say, but personally, it doesn't speak to me. It doesn't get me. I don't like it, but it doesn't mean it's not properly done. But yeah, that's what I wanted to throw out on that front. At the end of the day, it's so subjective that just bring an act to the table that you can get behind and be proud of and love, and just do that, have a good time, and make sure that whatever you bring is a part of you, or whatever you vote for is a part of you. Hopefully, what your country brings is reflective somehow of its citizens. Um, yeah, and however it goes, that's how it goes, and just have a good time for it. And of course, Australia came to join us on the 60th anniversary, so they've now, I think, participated 3 years in a row. If I'm would that have been the third or fourth? I don't know. Well, not entirely sure which year they entered, but I think it was 2015. So 15, 16, 17. We make this the fourth entry for Australia. If I'm right, please correct me if I'm wrong on this one. But yeah, at any rate, they're also not Europe. So all these people have said, well, Israel isn't even Europe, and why do they get to participate in the Eurovision Song Contest, etc., etc. Well, first of all, a lot of the people in Israel are have their roots in Europe, but they had to leave for a specific reason, which we keep being reminded of. To the degree that a lot of us are like, okay, do we really need to keep reliving um, 70, 80, 90 year old events? But yeah, for some reason that seems to still have escaped a few people, at least in this regard. But then again, Australia isn't really Europe either. And then people, it's so funny, the same people who go, well, Israel isn't Europe. And then they go, yeah, but well, Australia is kind of, it's the old English colony, whatever. So it's kind of, European culture. Well, but at the same time, these people would also bash Australia for how it treats its Aboriginal population. So I'm just like, so where's the consistency here? It's so obviously people just pulling this out of their, pardon my French for the excuse of the better term, rear ends, just to make an excuse to push Israel out because they just really don't like Israel for some, well, fairly obvious political reason, but be that as it may. But yeah, I don't know. I'm all for Australia. If they want to join in and participate, great. If Israel wants to participate, great. There was also this one time when Morocco had an entry in the Eurovision Song Contest for 1 year. I would have loved to see them come again. And then, people could have their little argument whether the fact that they used to be a French colony should override the fact that they're a Middle Eastern, well, North African country, really, within the Islamosphere or Arab sphere. But yeah, if they want to join and participate, it's great. Maybe we'll actually have a decent conversation about things, and be able to celebrate ourselves across some really, really tense theological and ideological borders nowadays. And, it would be good. It'd be good. Maybe we should expand this franchise to just include the entire Arab world and see what that does. Uh, but well, then there's that. That's maybe a bit too much to ask for. So yeah, and before there's another good point to point. It was I had a conversation on that night with someone who said she didn't like the fact that Israel won, and I asked her why. She said, "Well, gay rights and women's rights and everything," and I said, "Are you kidding me? Most progressive, if you will, country on that front in the region." And like, well, you can compare it to the region, but that doesn't mean you should justify it. Said and I can't see. I think as if you were to be intellectually honest from a point of view of progressives, they should probably see that Israel is doing a way better job at progressive politics than most of Europe and most of the rest of the Western world, even. Come a long way. I mean, first of all, even 20 years ago, the last time they won the Eurovision Song Contest, they had a trans woman singing that song. And I think she was probably the first trans person to participate, to compete in the Eurovision Song Contest. It was way before the Austrian girl with the beard. So, yeah, I'm just like, okay, so where's the issue here? And to top it all off, I've gotten wind of the issue that taxi drivers in Israel started having when the laws became so strict that you were guilty upon accusation. So the only thing a woman would have to do would be to accuse you, and you would have to prove yourself not guilty. So women were taking taxis all over Israel, just using them as their personal drivers to do all these random things throughout their day. And then when it came time to pay the massive bill that racked up, they'd just call the police and just yell how this taxi driver is sexually assaulting them and everything. And yeah, it wasn't until they got cameras in the taxis and we started seeing the videos that it actually the whole thing was unraveled and exposed. And it was scary to someone like myself who has driven taxi by profession. It's very scary to see that this guy is just sitting there, shoving himself to the door, far away from this woman who's just like over there howling and screaming how he's right in that moment, moving his hands all over her and whatnot, and the guy's just sitting there doing nothing, like a tiny mouse. Yeah, it's crazy. But that's progressive politics kind of going to its ultimate end goal there. So where's the argument that they're not doing enough in terms of women's rights or gay and LGBT rights? I from what I've seen, I'm not seeing it. For a country that's strictly founded upon the or religion of its population, its religious and cultural heritage. Yeah, I don't know. You be the judge. If you know more about Israel than I do, then yeah, please toss some stuff about gender and LGBTQ relations in Israel into the comment section. But yeah, just to go back to this whole thing, the initial thing, it's fun and disturbing to see that the Eurovision Song Contest has now become a tool for analysis. It's like I can look at this, the event itself, what's scoring and what's not scoring, what's moving up and what's not in the competition each year, and the media coverage around everything. I can just look at this and I can see exactly where Europe is at for that time, what the development's been since the year before in terms of the socio-political situation, and also in terms of a lot of things with the geopolitical situation. And you know, I love being at work. I love having my analysis tools, especially if I'm about to go into a country and do projects or investments or something in there. It's certainly good to see where and be able to predict where that country's going to be at and in the overall larger frame of things. But I wish this contest wasn't it. That that wasn't the analysis tool, analytical tool. I would really very much love for it to just be a place where people just drop the battle axes, drop the politics, drop the quarrels, everyday life, and just everybody in all these countries just grouping together with friends and family, um, get in front of the TV and watch some cringe fests worth of whatever songs and acts. Be they crappy or be they good, it doesn't really matter. Just have a decent time, vote or not, have a good party. Yeah, it's because it's been a good party with the Eurovision Song Contest over the years. Really, the parties have been pretty good. It's really used to be a lot more popular in countries than it is today. It used to be the kind of thing where if you were out somewhere while that contest was going on, you were definitely either a criminal or a police officer. But nowadays, it seems like it's falling out of grace, and I think it's for this very reason. Once you take away the integrity of something and start to force down our throats all these things that we have to deal with in everyday life that we're trying to get a bit of an escape from, such as political messaging, etc., etc., then yeah, it loses its purpose as entertainment, as an escape mechanism. Quite frankly, I think people need a little bit more of. It's very hard to find any recreation or entertainment nowadays that doesn't have that embedded in it. It's just a very sad thing. At any rate, I've been rambling on for way too long, so Viking out. Viking out.